This section presented the concept of strategy as a path, an intended route from A to B, with a number of particular dimensions that it's appropriate to consider as that strategy is developed. Also presented the concept of a fundamental attribution error, which seems to happen repeatedly in numerous organizations where they have a typical approach to dealing with a situation, which in almost all occasions just makes it worse. So something to avoid. The fact that the strategy has to be feasible so that people, in fact, believe that it's possible. It must improve the whole as opposed to just improving parts of it. And the strategy has to be owned by the stakeholders. If it's developed by some other group, then it has to be sold to the stakeholders as a meaningful undertaking, and they may buy into it, but they won't own it. Um, Successful strategies are typically those which are developed, and and because the stakeholders develop them, they understand them, they own them, they understand the reasons for doing it because they developed the reasons, and therefore they're typically they get implemented. Network magic was then used as a specific instance of a set of relationships that were developed for the current situation within that organization, and then reviewing that set of relationships and asking how it is that those relationships contribute to the existing situation and how you alter those particular relationships, create new relationships that allow it to migrate in the direction of the ideal alternative. It was also surfaced the thought that at this point it's essential to go ahead and review the assumptions to this point. I have recommended that you continually review the assumptions that you have made along the way to make sure that they're valid, and to to go ahead and look at this and think about when you decide to make changes, think about how those what those changes influence beyond what's already part of the established relationship, because typically that's the way that the unintended consequences are surfaced, because we look at a current situation and we decide that, well, if we change this, it will it will correct the situation, and we don't think about the other things that that change is likely to influence, and it's those influences that we don't think about that end up being the source of the unintended consequences. And and that's how the situations that we attempt to deal with actually end up getting worse, or we create new problems because we we end up with this myopic perspective about A influences B, and seldom can we ever do just one thing. Any action that we take ends up having multiple influences. So, using network magic, a, a whole set of possibilities was surfaced, and then the rationale for why it's appropriate to not to attempt to do all of the meaningful things at once. You have to sequence them in a manner that you can staff them and afford them. And again, revisiting the idea that the stakeholders have to figure out the meaningful strategy so they own it if it gets to be implemented. The last part that I still have to figure out how to work in here someplace is, I mean, the premise was how to solve problems so they stay solved and not create new ones in the process. And part of what has to happen so that the problem stays solved is in developing the strategy. You have to figure out what it is that you're going to monitor on an ongoing basis, so that if there are certain types of changes, you from that surface through the monitoring, you can add corrections along the way. It's sort of akin to you don't prepare the field and plant the crop and expect to come back 3 months later and have a very good harvest. You have to tend the field along the way on an ongoing basis. You have to ensure that it has water and fertilizer and pull out the weeds so that it's the same thing with a solution that you implement. If you implement the solution and simply expect it to be fine into the future, it's pretty certain that it'll only be fine for a little while and the solution will actually go awry for some reason or another. So that's a segment that I need to get worked into the strategy segment one way or another. So, told you, it's trial and learning. Hope you found this informative, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.